Friends, during the 19th and early 20th century, a whole lot of transportation and other industries depended on horses. In year 1840, in North America, around 4 million horses were employed for agriculture work and for travel and transportation. By year 1900, there were more than 24 million horses to plow fields and to pull street trolleys and carriages. The transport sector was so dominated by horses that at that time an average New Yorker took 297 horse car rides every year. And not just transportation, horses also provided almost one third of North America's energy needs. Not surprising that the American continent was full of horses. For every three people, there was one working horse in the United States. And the story was not much different in Europe either. 19th century cities depended on thousands of horses for their daily functioning. All transport, whether of goods or people, was drawn by horses. London in year 1900 had 11,000 cabs, all of which were horse-powered. There were also several thousand buses, each of which required 12 horses. But every coin has two sides. Anything growing in large numbers begins to cause issues, and the horses were no exception. Large number of horses began to cause huge environmental, health, and social problems. A horse would dump between 20 and 50 pounds of manure every single day, along with a gallon of piss. All this manure pounded and pulverized into dust attracted rodents and flies. The result was an ever-present layer of manure that clung to shoes, traveled in the wind, and seeped into the water supply. A government calculation at that time estimated that 95% of all the disease-carrying flies bred in the horse dung. Besides, there were deaths. In New York City, in year 1880, 15,000 horses died on the streets, which translates to 41 dead horses every single day. And dealing with those dead bodies was a huge problem. As we can understand, the situation was far from ideal. And that's why, when the automobiles caused a massive disruption in this transportation sector, people literally welcomed it. Henry Ford invented a cheap car and produced it on mass scale. The car did not pose any of those problems which were caused by horses. As a result, the cars grew in popularity. But this caused a lot of stress to people engaged in horse-related transportation business. Horses provided ancillary jobs like stable owners, feed producers, trainers, veterinarians, road cleaners, and so on and so forth. Besides, car industry brought many businesses related with horses and horse carts to a complete standstill, and as a result of that, their assets got stranded. The assets that get stranded due to a disruptive technology are called stranded assets, and that's the topic of our discussion today. If a piece of equipment or a resource that once had a value or produced an income, but it no longer does so due to some kind of external change or due to some change in technology or markets or societal habits, then that asset is called a stranded asset. For example, when electricity started replacing oil lamps for illuminating homes, lighting businesses suddenly found their oil lamp inventory devalued. Similarly, the whaling industry lost a key market for whale oil, leaving entire fleets idle. And in these cases, those lamps and those ships became stranded assets. Similarly, when the steel industry fled the United States for lower labor costs overseas, foundries, forges, smelters, and coking machines that could not be packed up and shipped abroad were stranded, along with many workers that were trained to use them. Today, the term stranded assets is most commonly used to describe oil and gas resources, the resources that have so far not been extracted, and there is less likelihood of them ever being extracted because of global movement against the carbon emissions. Although many companies' ledgers show many such underground oil and coal reserves as assets, there is a growing pressure on these companies to leave those assets in the ground and avoid burning them. Scientists say that burning those reserves would vastly exceed the global carbon budget, that is, the amount of greenhouse gases that can be emitted and still stay within the acceptable bounds of global warming. According to a 2015 study, an estimated one-third of oil reserves, half of gas reserves, and more than 80% of known coal reserves must remain unburned in order to meet global temperature targets under the Paris Agreement. It is also possible that during next few years there is some new disruptive technology which simply makes these assets useless and thus confirm them as stranded. Stranded assets are nowadays generally accepted to be those assets which at some point of time lose their economic value due to some disruption in technology or some change in regulatory environment. For example, if suddenly Elon Musk discovers an extremely cost-effective way to manufacture batteries and then goes on to produce them in massive quantities, then it is possible that a whole lot of countries give up thermal power plants and oil-fired plants and switch to solar power. If they do so, then dozens of coal and oil and gas companies will be left with billions and trillions of dollars worth of stranded assets. Similarly, if Government of India, due to its commitments to global environmental protocols, decides to ban coal power plants, then millions of tons of coal in coal mines in and around Dhanbad effectively becomes stranded assets. So friends, this was a brief intro to the topic of stranded assets. In the next episode, we will discuss yet another topic important for our personal and professional growth. So please don't miss it. Until then, keep learning, keep sharpening your skills, and keep improving.